When it comes to introducing new coping skills to the anxious mind, what you have to do is override the familiar. The anxious mind loves familiarity. It loves it because it is predictable, it's based on past experiences, and it knows how you are going to respond when you use a predictable coping skill. So when it comes to introducing a new skill or wanting to change your anxious response, the anxious mind is going to do everything that it can to keep you in what you know, because unfamiliarity is not part of the anxious mind's plan. So if you are somebody who has a set of coping skills that you've kind of outgrown, you know that they don't serve you anymore, and you want to introduce a new coping skill in order to really break an anxious pattern, you have to do so in a way that is intentional. Because as much as the anxious mind doesn't like unfamiliarity and it gets kind of cautious and nervous about change, it loves routine. So if you're introducing a new coping skill, you have to do so in a mindful way, a little bit every single day. It's kind of like exposure therapy, but if you're doing it with a skill set, you want to do it at the same time every day or in the same scenario every day. So that way you are rebuilding an alternative response to anxiety. And if you were to just kind of like launch into a new coping skill and not prep the mind, what you're talking about in this comment is going to happen. The anxious mind is going to say, like, we cannot do this. This feels too challenging. It is not going to work. Best to just stay with what we know. The mind ramps up its fear response. And in turn, you might actually feel that your physical body responds with a higher level of anxiety. You might feel that kind of like intense closed out sensation of like, no, I do not want this. I cannot do it. And when that happens, it is really the mind-body response to unfamiliarity that they did not see coming. And that is the anxious mind's like worst nightmare. The anxious mind thrives with knowing and anticipating what's coming down the line. So a way to introduce a coping skill that can be really helpful is reading about it first. Kind of gaining a little bit of familiarity. Does this feel like something you would be interested in? Does this seem like something that piqued your interest? And every single day, go back to reading more about it. Go back to kind of testing the waters. What happens if I employ it? What happens if I just kind of dance with the idea of using it? And every day as you warm yourself up to it, you are counteracting the anxious response. Now, of course, there are going to be moments where the anxiety rises, especially when you start employing that new response. But the key here is to start going back daily and seeing if you can hold space for the discomfort and ride it out until it begins to lower.